Happy Saturday, folks, and welcome to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for July 23rd, 2021. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend. And coming off that shit show that was Raw on Monday night, I'm happy that we had SmackDown this week to kind of cleanse the palate, so to speak. Not an overly great episode, and I thought the Rolling Loud stuff was unfortunately not botched, but it probably didn't go over the way that they wanted it to, which I'll get into, because this was the first episode of SmackDown ever, I believe, to emanate from two different locations simultaneously. They not taped, I believe it was live, if I'm not mistaken. They aired live from the Rolling Loud Festival in Miami, simultaneously with SmackDown in Cleveland, which, how can you not mention the new Guardians name for the Indians team that I think was made official this past week, and of course Cena mentioned that in his opening promo. But nonetheless, they were at two different locations, and when I saw that announced a few weeks ago, I thought, oh, that's actually pretty cool. More of this, please. I think this is unique, different, blah, blah, blah. And then they do it, and I think it sounded better in theory than it did in execution. And to their credit, it actually looked pretty cool. The camera work, though, was questionable, because no one there gave a fuck about WWE or wrestling or whatever the hell it was that they were seeing, sports entertainment. If it wasn't John Cena or Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock or someone that they were probably more familiar with than fucking Otis or Chad Gable, then they just weren't going to give a shit. So that was unfortunate, but it was a cool concept. We'll get more into that. In addition to Roman Reigns and John Cena, Rollins, Edge, and everything else coming out of this pretty good episode of SmackDown overall, once again for July 23rd, 2021. One quick note, my interview with the new Mr. Money in the Bank and SmackDown superstar, cheap plug, Big E is now live here on the channel and on Bleacher Report. So check out that audio interview if you haven't already right here on the channel from Friday, talking all about his Money in the Bank win, why it's such a great time for black wrestlers right now in wrestling and in WWE specifically, what he's going to be carrying in the case, cashing in the contract at some point, and all this other really cool stuff and great topics with Big E. So check out that interview that went live here on the channel yesterday and the article version of that same interview that went live on Bleacher Report on Friday as well. So be sure to check that out. But let's get right into this episode of SmackDown from Friday. Now, we had John Cena opening the show a lot like he opened Raw on Monday night. And I assume SmackDown is where he's going to stay. Now, I know they released the entire summer of Cena's schedule. I don't know if they announced... They probably did. I didn't really look at it too closely. I don't know if they announced any Raw dates for him going into SummerSlam. They probably did. Yes, he was on Raw this week, but that doesn't really mean much just because they just put him on Raw to boost the rating coming out of the pay-per-view when people were going to be talking more about Cena coming out of the pay-per-view the next day than they would be 4 days later. So I could see why they did that. Cena isn't tied to one brand or the other, so he could show up on Raw if he wanted to and do some mini feuds if he wants. Maybe because Roman turned him down on the show, maybe we see Cena pop up on Raw and try to challenge Bobby Lashley. Honestly, I think that'd be pretty fucking cool. I would much rather see Bobby and John than I would Bobby and fucking Goldberg at this point. Fuck Goldberg. And I mean, I like Goldberg, but the whole booking of him and it just that's a Raw issue. We're talking about SmackDown here today. He probably could appear on Raw. He probably will appear on Raw in the weeks to come before SummerSlam just to kind of get the most out of Cena while he's around. I know he's doing house shows on the weekends and stuff like that in addition to SmackDown. Raw's probably likely to because from what I saw, the schedule is stacked with dates for Cena. So they probably will put him on Raw in the next couple of weeks. But he opened up the show here, like I said earlier. He did mention the Guardians name, saying that WWE or SmackDown will be renamed to the Guardians or something because he's brought disrespect upon WWE as the Universal Champion, which I thought was funny. I don't hate the Guardians name. I mean, I'm not a big baseball fan, but I've never been an Indians fan either. But I don't know. I don't think the name is that bad. Maybe that's just me being a Marvel fan and being a fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know. But from what I saw, people just did not like that at all. They thought Guardians was dumb, and obviously it's a far cry from Indians, but it's probably a lot more politically correct, which is why they're doing it. I don't know if the name goes into effect next season, because I know they had a game last night, and I think they were still calling them the Indians, right? Like I said, I don't follow baseball at all, so I don't really know. But anyway, so Cena talked about that. He talked about Roman Reigns, and he talked about all this other stuff before Paul Heyman came out, not Roman Reigns, to kind of just tell Cena, well, Roman's not here right now. He's not declining your challenge, but we'll hear from Roman later on in the show. And then the best part of the Paul Heyman promo, aside from the fact that he's just great on the mic, was when he sang John Cena's theme song, saying do 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 do, doing the whole spiel, and then walking out, which was just absolutely amazing. Cena was great here, and he's a master of the microphone in the sense that he can control a crowd like no other. Maybe aside from like The Rock and Stone Cold and people like that, he is just fantastic at this point. And as I've seen other people mention, it is weird watching a John Cena entrance without the John Cena sucks chants attached to it, which have kind of followed him everywhere for the last like 5 or so years. Probably longer than that. I mean, he's been getting the whole John Cena sucks thing for like 10, 15 years. But I'm talking about as part of the theme song. That kind of started up when? 2014, 2015? The first time I can remember it was when he came out for SummerSlam 2015 when I was there. People were probably doing it before that, but that was the first time that I could recall him getting the whole John Cena sucks treatment during his entrance. But he didn't get it here. They absolutely love the guy. And he's just a great... I know they call The Rock the people's champion, but Cena is a very close second in that regard. He's a very close second in that regard in terms of being a very close contender to being the people's champion because he is such a great crowd pleaser with his promos and how he interacts with the audience. He's awesome. So that kind of left a cliffhanger, kind of left the hook, creating a hook for the remainder of the show as to what Roman Reigns, or how Roman Reigns would respond to John Cena here on the show. Our first taste of in-ring action saw Finn Balor having his first match back on the blue brand in almost 2 years, beating Sami Zayn, 2 former NXT champions here. I remember Sami Zayn's first match being back from injury. Now, Balor wasn't injured, but it is his first match back on SmackDown. Remember, because I was there, but I recall this for that reason. But Sami Zayn's, if you can remember, his first match back from injury 2 years ago, the night after WrestleMania 35, was against Finn Balor for the Intercontinental Championship. And a lot like that time, Finn Balor won here as well. With a clean win over Sami, good match, quality stuff here from 2 of the best in-ring guys on SmackDown today. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. A good win for Balor, back on the blue brand. Now I did notice, and I expressed this criticism last week, that with Balor, he's still kind of doing the smiley babyface bullshit. Now the whole arms thing, interacting with the audience, throwing his arms up in the air, that's fine, because obviously he's front of bigger crowds now. He wants to feed off the audience. That's what people remember. That's fine, and they're still putting the Prince stuff on the big screen, which is good, but it doesn't really mean anything. If they're just calling him the Prince as opposed to him acting like the Prince persona from NXT, that's a problem. I'm not even saying he needs to go full-on heel. Now, that would be fucking awesome, because his heel run from NXT early on was amazing. His entire most recent second stint in NXT was great. But like specifically when he was a heel, it was just money. But at any rate, it would be really cool to see Finn Balor use that persona from NXT on the main roster. Whether he will or not is the question. I'm not expecting it, because so far he's been kind of like the Finn Balor babyface that we saw before he left for NXT a few years ago. But I'm hoping we get back to that Balor from NXT, because I feel like that's the Balor that's really money. And that's going to come into play a little bit later on, too, as he enters, spoiler alert, the Universal Championship picture. And we'll get to that at the end of the show. So we had Big E out next to address his Money in the Bank victory, and he already kind of spoke to me about it. Cheap plug, again. His whole Money in the Bank win from the pay-per-view last weekend. But he was out here in front of an audience. The crowd was absolutely loving Big E. He was about to, explain how great it was to be the Mr. Money in the Bank and all this other stuff, before he was quickly interrupted by Apollo Crews. Now, they've been feuding now since late 2020, on and off over the Intercontinental Championship, and I was disappointed to see him come out here just because it should be time for Big E to move on. He's Mr. Money in the Bank now. There's not a wide variety of people for him to feud with on SmackDown now, with Rollins being busy. They don't have a lot of top-tier heels on the blue brand, so they have to find something for him to do as opposed to being directionless, which it's a shame that they cut Aleister Black, because that would have been a great feud for him to do, obviously, a couple of months ago, coming off the Apollo's feud. The thing with the Apollo's feud is that with the two of them, they have good matches. Big E's already beaten Apollo to qualify for Money in the Bank to begin with before winning the briefcase on Sunday. Before they move forward, though, maybe they could do the multi-man tag team match that they teased here. They had Cesaro get involved, Shinsuke Nakamura. They had Aziz out there as well, obviously, with Crews. Dolph Ziggler, Robert Roode. So I figured it would lead to a multi-man tag team match coming out of the commercial break, but they just kind of led into the Rolling Loud Festival instead. But yeah, still, I mean, I don't want to see another one-on-one match between the two. Maybe they could just kind of get it over with and move on. But if it's up to me, I would just do the multi-man tag team match, assuming they didn't do it at the show, not in front of the live camera. I don't know what they were showing the audience. I had heard that they were cutting, Pat McAfee was cutting promos in front of the crowd or something like that. I don't know what they were showing that crowd when they were when they were airing the footage from the Rolling Loud Festival in Miami. But they got to move on with Big E out of the Intercontinental Championship picture. Cesaro even said here when he was coming out to the ring that he has his sights set on the Intercontinental title. So I think that would be a much fresher feud. That would be a great match for SummerSlam. They work well together from what I've seen before, and it's a natural progression of the Cesaro character. I just think Big E going back to the Cruz feud would be a big step backward for him. So kind of a pointless segment here, and I was really looking forward to hearing from Big E. We didn't get that, but hopefully next week. So like I said, from there they pivoted to the Rolling Loud Festival in Miami, and this is where it all went to shit. Now, it wasn't terrible because what we got was decent. They showed us 2 matches. They had Wale out there. The Street Profits made their anticipated return. They've been gone now for a while. Dawkins has been off the show for a few weeks, but Montez Ford specifically has been out of action for like well over a month now. In storyline, they had Otis take him out, but I think in actuality, he had like surgery or something. Nothing major because obviously he's back now, but I think that's why he was gone for so long. So they came back here. They had Wale perform with the Profits for like a minute before doing the match of Dawkins and Chad Gable one-on-one. And it was fine while it lasted, but it became even more evident during the subsequent SmackDown Women's Championship match between Bianca Belair and Carmella that these people just did not give a fuck about what they were watching. Now, like I said earlier, I thought it was a cool concept. Visually, it looked awesome. To see the ring on the stage, you see, I don't know how many people were there. It's in Miami. It's a fucking festival, but I don't know, thousands of people, 10,000 people, probably not 10,000. Probably like 5,000 to 8,000 maybe. It's kind of hard to tell, especially because it was at night. But visually, it looked amazing. If you actually listened to it, though, it was awful. I don't know what was worse, the fact that they had probably no one listening or no one reacting for the entirety of the 2 matches. Not only that, but the fact that they piped in crowd noises for both fucking matches. It was just an awful, awful atmosphere. Like, I don't know what would have been worse, the fact that they were quiet or the fact that they were piping in fake crowd noises because these people weren't reacting. So it just wasn't good. The matches themselves were fine. Dawkins beat Otis. They had, obviously, Bianca beat Carmella. And that was why they did the rematch, because a lot of people were wondering last week, well, why would you do Bianca and Carmella again if Bianca already beat Carmella clean last week on the show? Well, this was why. They wanted an attraction for the show. Now, I don't know when they added the whole SmackDown element to the festival. I know they announced it a few weeks ago, but I can guarantee you, people did not buy tickets to the Rolling Loud Festival to watch bands and artists perform and shit, to watch professional wrestling. So it goes both ways, though. I saw someone else say this online, but you know, we've seen concerts before on Raw, on SmackDown, and people just don't give a fuck. So you kind of reverse the roles and put wrestling in front of a concert, and they don't give a shit either. So honestly, they probably deserve that. It sucked for the performers, and you know, Bianca looked like she was out there having a blast. She had Miami-themed gear, which was cool, but this was just a failed experiment. So we got to move on from this. Hopefully they just never do it again. And if they do, it's got to be in an atmosphere where more people will fucking care. And I thought they would at least like politely clap. No, I think the worst part about this was not the fact that the crowd wasn't reacting, and it's not really their fault. They didn't buy tickets to see SmackDown. It was the fact they constantly cut to the crowd with the camera. Holy shit, this was awful. They constantly cut to the crowd as opposed to just letting it be in the background, which looked cool enough. You hear these like chants and all this other shit, and it's completely silent, and the people are just clearly not reacting. It brought back memories of the old Impact shows from like 10, 15 years ago and the TNA tapings when you would hear like massive canned boos, like all this heat and shit, and then you would just see in the background that no one was reacting. They were just sitting on their hands. They weren't doing that here because they were standing, literally, but it was just just not a good atmosphere, and they got to do something better than that next time. Either they just don't do it next time, or like, I don't know, if they do like a FOSD festival or something like that. If like in AEW, for like, I think a prime example would be the Jericho Cruise. Like, obviously that's more of a music thing. They just so happen to have wrestling on it. If they did that in the future, I think that would be a better idea, because people came there to see not just Fozzy or wrestling, but they came there on the boat to see Chris Jericho. So if they did something along those lines, I think that would be a smarter idea, because what they did here was just no one gave a fuck, and it was just embarrassing, unfortunately. Just very cringeworthy might be the best way to describe it. We were back in Cleveland for the remainder of the show after that. Again, what they did in between, I don't know. I had seen clips of like Pat McAfee cutting promos, which is entertaining enough. But we had Edge attacking Seth Rollins after, Edge was out there cutting a promo, Rollins interrupting him. Great stuff here, simple stuff, but a strong segment overall, with Edge acknowledging that Rollins threatened to, not only break his neck, but fucking end his life 7 years ago when Rollins brought back the Authority. And if given the opportunity, he would have done it this time. He didn't do it back in 2014. He has the balls now, he says, to do it in 2021. So Edge got pissed at that. He went after Rollins. They kind of go back and forth. That Rollins out there wearing a ridiculous suit as always. And then Edge got the upper hand. So I thought this was great stuff, kind of setting the stage for SummerSlam. They didn't make the match official, but I assume they will make it official at some point in the coming probably week or two. But that's obviously the direction they're going in for the pay-per-view, and I think that's great. So this was basic stuff, simple stuff. The crowd was into it. Edge got a massive reaction when it came out. Rollins got a lot of heat in the ring, and I'm digging this current character of Rollins. I see some people just aren't right now, and that's fine. For me, I'm digging it. I think the whole presentation is great, and I think these two are fantastic foils for one another going into SummerSlam. We had the SmackDown debut after that of Toni Storm. Now, well, not technically SmackDown debut, because I think she was a part of the Survivor Series build, was she not? In 2019? She may have appeared at least once. So, obviously her official SmackDown debut was on this show, but she's at least appeared on SmackDown once. Maybe they just saved her for Survivor Series, I don't know. But either way, she made her official debut as a member of the SmackDown roster on this show, knocking off Zelina Vega. Now, more people I saw online were talking about Zelina than they were Toni Storm, just because Zelina, she lost, which she should have, and she didn't get an entrance. Now, here's my thing with Zelina. Yes, it is a little odd they didn't show her entrance. Usually they don't show someone's entrance unless they're just a complete jabron. They don't work there, or they don't have time or something like that. It's very rare they don't show someone's entrance, because usually they like to broadcast all the entrances to kill as much time as possible. They didn't show hers. That was weird, but the fact that she lost and the fact that she hasn't won a single match since coming back to the company, one, is odd, but two, I can't say I'm overly surprised or even bothered by this. And I might be in the minority here with the Zelina Vega situation, and I talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Her reasons for coming back, she probably is making a shitload of money for coming back, all this other shit, going back on the whole unionization bullshit. I don't really care about that, but the fact that she's back and losing doesn't bother me one bit. Because literally almost everyone else in that division, aside from probably Tamina, who is just terrible, Natalya's better in the ring than Zelina Vega is, but she's just old news at this point. She's been around for fucking ever. Zelina Vega, she's more bearable than Natalya. Beyond those two, Zelina Vega should not be pushed over Bianca Belair. Should not be pushed over Sasha Banks, Shotzi Blackheart, Tegan Nox, now Toni Storm. She doesn't even come close to being as good in the ring or as good of a presentation overall as those women are from this standpoint. Now, I've said before, I think her natural strong suit is as a manager and is on the microphone. If she's not talking, then I don't care. She's not terrible in the ring, and she's competent enough to have a decent match like she did here with Toni, although it was mostly about Toni. It was a pretty standard squash match for Toni. But with Vega, though, this is the role that I always envisioned her being in. Even before she got released, she was being used in an enhancement role. I had an issue with her facing Asuka at the Clash of Champions pay-per-view last year, because they had so many other women they could have put in that spot, and they put in Vega, who, was a fresh face in the Raw Women's title picture, but she had no credibility. I don't think she had ever won a singles match before, prior to right before the pay-per-view, and I just don't care about her in that respect. As a manager, I think she's great. And maybe she could still be a manager for someone and also wrestle on the side, whether that's Angel Garza, who's dying a fucking death on Raw right now, or what have you, I don't know. But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all that she was brought back to just lose. She's not being brought back to get pushed. That was never the issue. It's not like she left back in November. I think people kind of twist the narrative a little bit. She never wanted to quit in the first place. They released her. It's not like she went home because she was upset with the booking. She quit because she was being underutilized or whatever. She was perfectly fine with where she was on the card. I imagine she didn't say otherwise. Where she was on the card at that point in time. The only issue that she had with the company was the whole unionization thing and the fact that she couldn't Twitch and stream and do the OnlyFans shit or whatever the hell else she was doing at that point. The whole third-party platform bullshit that was going on around that time. As far as I know, that was the only issue she had with the company. They had that resolved, so she's back now. I don't think I've ever seen her complain about, they were never pushing me. She's just, maybe she feels she should be pushed, because why wouldn't you feel like you should be pushed? And she can be pushed in other ways, like as a manager or as a talker. As an in-ring worker, though, she's just not that good to be pushing her over someone like Toni Storm. If Vega won here, it would have been fucking Karrion Kross all over again. Thankfully, they resisted that urge. They put Toni Storm over. And I think she's going to be a great get for the Blue Brain. I said that last week, but Storm is going to be very popular, I think, as a babyface. And I think it was Alexis who made the comparison. But I think she could be like the next Becky Lynch of WWE. If they push her right and if they play their cards right, she could be the next Becky Lynch that gets over with the crowd and has that great, 80s gimmick that people can kind of connect with and stuff like that. She's back to being a babyface, and quite honestly, although I hate the inconsistencies from NXT and how they don't acknowledge certain things or forget certain things ever even happened and change names and shit, thankfully she's Toni Storm, not Toni or just Storm, which would have been fucking dumb. They didn't touch her name unlike Nox and Shotzi, which is whatever. I ranted about that last week. I think she's golden. I think she has a lot of potential. And I think she is more of a natural babyface than she is a heel. Now, she needed the heel turn in NXT just because she wasn't doing shit in NXT and a lot of people overshadowed her. But I think on SmackDown, she's right where she should be as a babyface. I think her and Bianca at some point could be a lot of fun. Her and Sasha at some point could be a lot of fun. She hasn't really faced any of the other women. I can't remember many matches, if any matches, she had with Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart. And obviously she beat Zelina here. Natalya, Tamina, who gives a fuck about those two? But no, I thought this was a very good debut for Zelina, and I'm honestly, personally, maybe I'm in the minority here, but I wasn't really bothered by the fact that Zelina was fed to Toni Storm in this match. We then had the king of DUIs himself, Jimmy Uso, taking on Dominik Mysterio. Fine little match. The fact that it was Jimmy in there and not Jay, and Jimmy won, no less, it could not be more evident. They just, not that they don't care, but clearly they're not going to punish the guy for what he was involved in with the whole DUI at the beginning of the month. Nothing's going to come out of this at all. I mean, the guy is one half of the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. He's won his last 3 matches here on the show. They won last week on SmackDown, they won at Money in the Bank, and he won here. Clearly, they're not going to push this man. So at this point, I'm not bothered by it. It still annoys me, but I've come to expect it. The match itself was fine. I am happy they are furthering the feud. I mean, Jimmy Uso shouldn't be on TV at all, realistically, but if he's going to be, it makes sense to do another match between these two teams. The Mysterios had a great match with the Usos at the pay-per-view, so a rematch on an upcoming episode of SmackDown or even at SummerSlam, I think, is the way to go. We get to the main event segment. The king of promos himself, Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, head of the table, what have you. This was awesome. So Roman Reigns was out there with Paul Heyman to address John Cena. In so many words, he said no. He said at Money in the Bank, John Cena came out wearing the nostalgia hat, doing the same thing. He's always back saying the same stuff, doing the same things, blah, 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 blah. And he said it was like missionary, doing the same thing over and over and over, which got a big pop out of Paul Heyman, got a big pop out of the crowd, got a big pop out of pretty much everyone online that saw the promo, which was just great. It was a great fucking line. And even Roman can tell, you could tell from the look on his face after he said it, that he knew that was a great line because he was laughing on the inside. But that was awesome. But instead of Cena coming out to confront Roman, it was Finn Balor. And I thought this was a really cool surprise because we already saw Finn Balor earlier in the show. So if Balor hadn't had that match against Sami Zayn, I would have said, oh, why would he come out? We already saw him. Because they don't usually put people on the show more than once, especially if it's not related to the same stuff. Like if Cena came out a second time, obviously this was about Cena, so I would have expected him to come out. But he didn't. It was Finn Balor. So Balor, I forgot exactly what he had said, but he just kind of came face to face with Roman, challenged him, and Roman accepted. Now, they never said the word SummerSlam. They never referenced SummerSlam. They never put up a graphic on Twitter advertising it for SummerSlam, which tells you they're not doing it at SummerSlam. Now, they never said they're doing it next week on SmackDown, but that's what I'm expecting. Either they're going to officially announce Roman Reigns and Finn Balor for SmackDown next week for the Universal Championship, or maybe this could be leading to a Cena Balor match with the winner getting a title shot at SummerSlam. I like this and I don't like this. I thought it was a great moment. Obviously, Balor beat Roman in his Raw debut 5 years ago tomorrow on Monday Night Raw, which is a crazy coincidence. Arriving on Raw, beating Roman before going on at SummerSlam to beat Seth to become the first ever Universal Champion. So, there's a lot of unfinished business there. Obviously, he held the championship for a day, never held it again. Got very few opportunities to get the belt back. He actually faced Roman for the championship at the Barclays Center 2 years later on the Raw after SummerSlam and lost. But still, they never really had a full-on feud, did Balor and Roman, and I think this would be a lot of fun. But that's exactly it. I want to see a full-on feud between Finn Balor and Roman Reigns. I don't expect Cena to win at SummerSlam. I don't think he should win at SummerSlam against Roman Reigns. Roman needs more opponents going into the fall. I know they're doing a draft in October, reportedly. They still need more faces, whether it be from Raw or SmackDown. Big E is Mr. Money in the Bank. Could he cash in at SummerSlam on Roman, Cena, Goldberg, Lashley? Yes, I still think they should hold off with Big E until later down the road, whether it be a Mania or a different pay-per-view. There are reports, spoiler alert, that The Rock could be on his way back. That could be a potential program for Roman at some point in the foreseeable future. But still, I don't want to see them give away Balor and Roman at this point. I think that's a great feud you can do for after SummerSlam, Clash of Champions, whatever the October pay-per-view is. We already got Hell in a Cell this year, so I don't know what it's going to be. Probably a Saudi show. Survivor Series, Rock might be involved, but the December show, New Year's Revolution, or whatever the fuck they're calling the New Year's Day show, which they announced in a WWE Extra on their YouTube channel and the website last night. They are doing a pay-per-view on New Year's Day. And if it's not called New Year's Revolution, and it's in Atlanta, by the way, if it's not called New Year's Revolution, what the fuck are we even doing here at this point? What a waste. But in all seriousness, though, I do want to see Roman and Balor save for later down the road. I think doing it on an episode of SmackDown on a 1 or 2 week build is a waste. The guy just came back. He's not buried, especially if he takes him or Cena to the limit. And again, even if he faces Cena, like we know he's not beating Cena at this point. They are doing Roman and Cena at SummerSlam. I honestly thought was going, I was thinking the other day, they should have switched the SummerSlam opponents around. I know Roman and Cena is the biggest match. Hey, but listen, this is what I would have done. I would have had Goldberg come back after Roman Reigns. I fucking hate Goldberg in the title picture. But here's the thing, though. We never got Roman and Goldberg. And Goldberg went for the WWE title this year. He didn't go for the Universal Championship. I know that's nitpicking, but at least there's a storyline reason for why he would want to go after Roman Reigns. He has no previous beef at all with Bobby Lashley. And he has no reason to go back after the WWE title. You fucking lost. He never got his Universal title rematch, so he can go back after that. I was thinking they could have done Roman and Goldberg finally. Roman wins, obviously. And then do Cena and Bobby Lashley. Because remember, one of Bobby's last big matches, his last real big match in WWE before he left 15 years ago, 13, 14 years ago, was against John Cena. WWE actually put up the match in its entirety on their YouTube channel the other day. Great American Bash, 07. I think we probably just passed the recent anniversary of that. Cena wins. I think Bobby got hurt the next night in a match with Mr. Kennedy, and that was it. We never saw him in WWE for the next 10 years. So I would have done that because I think Goldberg and Roman have unfinished business. Cena and Bobby make sense. You have Bobby still win. You still have the same outcomes. You just switch up the opponents. And you could save Roman and Cena for another time. I don't think they want to do that, though, because they don't always have John Cena available. They might not have him available for another year or two. So they want to do it now, which I understand, whatever. Goldberg, you can really bring back at any point in the next year or two. So nonetheless, with Balor and Roman, I think it could be a great match. I like this. It switches things up. It's not as easy. It's not as simple as, Roman accepts Roman and Cena at SummerSlam. No, they're going to make you wait for it. And they have a couple weeks until the pay-per-view. I don't want them to wait until, the 11th hour to make that match official for the show, obviously. But it does make matters more interesting. I don't think it would be a triple threat. I think Roman's getting fed to Balor before the pay-per-view. I think rather Balor's getting fed to Roman before the pay-per-view. And then it's Cena and Roman at SummerSlam, which is great. I just don't want to see Balor being fed to the Universal Champion before a big pay-per-view. Save that shit for September. Save that shit for October, November, December. Roman needs more opponents. I mean, you can bring Jeff Hardy back over to SmackDown. You can do that as a feud. You can do him and Big E at some point. I would still wait on that personally, but that's an idea as well. Nakamura is one, if they built him up enough. He kind of feels just mid-card to me right now, but if they build him up a little bit more, the King shit just isn't enough. If they could build him up a little bit more, Nakamura and Roman have unfinished business from earlier this year, and that's an option as well. But we'll see where this goes. It's a little plot twist. I assume just for a week or two, but it should be a great match if nothing else. So overall, I thought this was a thumbs-up show, much better than Raw. Didn't have any real surprises, other than the fact that the crowd didn't give a fuck at the Rolling Loud Festival, or Rolling Quiet, or whatever you want to call it. Rolling Silent, at least for those two matches. But I thought overall it was a very consistent show, and, no real blow-away matches. Balor and Sami Zayn was pretty good, but the Balor and Roman development was interesting. We got Cena on the show. The Edge and Rollins promo was very good. No Sasha Banks on the show as I expect, and maybe she'll be back next week. I absolutely am positive they're doing Bianca and Sasha at SummerSlam. Why else would they have waited this long to bring back Sasha Banks. And I'm very glad she didn't return to the fucking Rolling Loud Festival when no one would have given a shit. So I thought that was well done. But yeah, there weren't any real surprises or debuts or returns or anything really like that aside from Cena appearing, which we already knew about in advance. But we don't need that for every show. The crowd was hot all night long. And yeah, I don't know. I just enjoyed the show for what it was. A much better experience, in my opinion, than what I got from Raw on Monday night. So thank you guys for checking out the review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. We'll be back next Saturday with another exclusive audio review of Friday Night SmackDown. And like I said earlier, check out my exclusive interview right now here on the channel with the Mr. Money in the Bank, Big E himself, SmackDown superstar. Great conversation. Also available in article form over on Bleacher Report. Have an awesome weekend, guys. Check out my Talking Smack audio review going live here tomorrow on the channel. Have an awesome one. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.